How secure are we as the African continent? Is there anything to celebrate about this year? And to have that discussion with us is none other than Anne Wanjiri Njuguna, who's seated on my immediate left. She is the project officer at the Solidarity Dad East and Central Africa. Seated next to Anne is William Margwanga from World Vision Kenya Associate, where he's the Director of Livelihoods and Resilience. Thank you so much, lady and gentlemen, for joining us. But let me start with you, Anne. Celebrating this day, is there a need to celebrate it as the African continent?
Sadly, if I start from where we come from, that is Kenya, sadly there is nothing to celebrate because apparently our food security status is deteriorating day in, day out. And if you look at the statistics, actually in this year, the group that is in charge of the food security in the country says that between May and now, the situation has even worsened, and there is a 60% rise in the households that are food insecure. So from where I say it, we have nothing to celebrate about.
We have nothing to celebrate about.
We have a long way to go because we still are very food insecure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So William, do you agree with what Anne is saying?
To some extent, yes, but there is also something to celebrate about because there are efforts you have made. And if you look, for example, in the World Vision, we have managed to work out in some of those dry areas which used to get food assistance to the extent that people are graduating from getting food assistance. For example, in Taita Taveta, we have about 6 irrigation schemes which we have supported. In Turkana, we have about another 7 irrigation schemes. And if you look at all these in Baringo, in Narok, these irrigation schemes have managed to graduate people out of receiving food to the extent that now they are self-sufficient. And for us, there is a momentum going towards in terms of becoming food self-sufficient. So there's something. I know we are struggling. I know we have not reached yet there, but there's something at least.
There's something to celebrate about.
There's something to celebrate about.
And you know, agriculture has been the backbone of most African countries, yet Africa is still food insecure. So could we change our methods can we change our methods of production to actually address the challenge that we are facing?
I think if we adopted some technology, for example, if you look at the statistics in Kenya, the only area that we have for production that is favorable for agricultural production is approximately 20%, but it's still not efficiently used. Now, if we can utilize that and also from what we've been doing, increase the production, maybe adopt some technology, maybe change our thinking about food security and what can be eaten at what time, I think that would go a long way. Because in as much as we say that we're food insecure, I think if we put some more effort, we could go a long way in improving our food security status. Now, for example, what is mentioned, with the interventions of most of the civil society organizations, sometimes the government comes in, the donors come in, you find that we are in a position to change the narratives of some of the areas that have not been producing very well, and you find that some of these people become food secure. Because you find the main issue that we have with the food security in Kenya is the low productivity, and sometimes the climatic conditions are not favorable, and also the sector from the policy level is not very friendly. So if each person, that means the farmer, the NGOs or the civil society organizations, the government, the private sectors, all of them, if we come together, I think we can make a milestone in this.
Yeah, and you know, when you talk about using technology, you know, trying to probably expand the food production, you know, in Africa and in Kenya. There's been a lot of, you know, talk and suggestions of introducing variety of foods. And some of the suggestions that have been introduced, people are talking about eating cockroaches, others talking about eating locusts. So what introduction should we include when you talk about food variety? And
just maybe to add before I answer your question, just to add what Anne is saying, their technology, look at Israel. It's a whole desert, but they're able to produce enough and even export. In Kenya, yes, rain-fed agriculture is only possible in 20%, but you can use the other 80% if we do the right technologies. We can do what I call household water harvesting.
Beautiful.
And we change the narrative. We can do micro-irrigation, we change the narrative. We can do hydroponics, just growing, that is producing crops without even using the soil. We can do that. And now, coming back to you, In terms of when we are talking about food insufficiency, or we are talking of hunger, hunger is not only the quantity of the food you eat. Actually, the issue is that sometimes the food we eat, we are going to the fast joints, we are going to processed foods, which are making us to be unhealthy. We are actually hungry. We are eating a lot of quantity, but it's not the right food we are supposed to eat for our bodies. So in that case, what we are helping at, can we go back? There is what we call traditional African foods. Our focus in Kenya should be not only increase in terms of per yield per acre, but we should also go for the right type of food. Here I'm talking about having things like munafu, the Solanum nigram. We are talking about spider flower, otherwise known as saga. We are talking about orange fresh sweet potato, which are very nutritious, and not only that, they are also drought resistant. That means if you, instead of waiting for the rainfall, that rain is sufficient to produce those crops. And that's why you get, in the old times, we were able to produce actually a lot of food.
All right.
And it was able to meet our needs. Yes.
And even as we celebrate this day, Anne, is Africa well prepared to eradicate hunger?
In Africa, our preparedness is not so good, but I think we can do it. We can do it. Maybe if we start from checking where our bottlenecks are and where our weaknesses have been and where we failed in the past, maybe with that we can now have some building blocks towards where we want to be. Because we have very good climatic conditions. Our climatic conditions allow us to produce a variety of these crops and a variety of the food crops and also the cash crops. Now, I think if we go back to the description or definition of what food security is, it's not all about production itself. It's even the power, as in the purchasing power. I might not produce, for example, you do not grow crops, but if we check on your food security index, we might find that you're more secure than someone who is on the ground, than someone who is in the village. Why? Because you might have a higher purchasing power. So looking at food security, I think we should broaden our perspective and look at it from a point of what basically is food security. It's not about production only. In as much as I do not produce, do I have the purchasing power to buy exactly what my body needs or what I feel like I want to eat at that point? Because food security is all about food preference, it's about nutrition, it's about sufficient food, it's about safe food. If you bring all this together, I think as a country and as a continent, if we bring all the stakeholders on board, we have a hope.
Yeah. And a lot of concern has been that in the 21st century, we are still having, Africans being affected by food insecurity. Let's talk about Turkana. We talk about, the northeastern region. We talk about the eastern region. A lot of food insecurity cases have been reported because not everyone can afford a meal, just to have probably breakfast, bread and tea that has milk. It's not very easy for some people. Yet we have a government, let me actually say governments, the county and the national governments. And we see President Uhuru Kenyatta's, one of the big 4 agenda is food security. So are we at a place as a country where we can say that achieving this, one of the big 4 agenda, which is food security, is achievable as a nation as we speak right now?
For me, the way I stand, I feel that we have got, if only we put that effort, which Anna's talked about, that Kenya is capable enough to produce that. We need to do, the council needs to focus on the right investments, on the right technologies, and also providing the right enabling environment. I gave the example of Turkana. We have worked with the county government of Turkana in the irrigation schemes. And we have seen, I can tell you, the acreage and the people who have graduated. And they will tell you we used to get food assistance for the last 20 years. We grew up, but now we are able to donate. Yes, a place like Moral Irrigation Scheme, LLA Irrigation in Turkana, they were able to donate to their fellow Turkanas in the last drought. That shows that if we put the right investment in the right place, it's feasible. World Vision can do on spot, so that can do. And the government, let's put all our efforts together for a common purpose. The only thing is if we do, everybody doing their own thing there, intending you don't get that impact. But if we focus on the right time in terms of the right investments, the right technologies, because technologies when we work to Turkana might not be the same, for example, in Mandera. In Mandera, for example, what we are looking at is the livestock. The main their main is livestock as a livelihood. So we have to see how then we improve that livestock. What we need is to do, because we know there are frequent droughts, what we need to do is, for example, to increase index-based livestock insurance.
All right.